Hello, Exiles. Talkative Try back here with another Path of Exile 2 video. I have been sitting on all the teasers and news tidbits and other information for the past few days regarding Path of Exile 2, waiting to pack it all up into a single video, and this is that video. We have new mercenary or crossbow skills to be looking at. We have tidbits from a new exclusive interview from the Tokyo Gaming Show that was just released today in full by Grinding Gear Games on their Path of Exile YouTube page. And of course, we have the teasers about unique items and a little bit of a look at a new tool that you can use to prepare for Path of Exile 2's early access, which releases on December 6th, 2024, as long as there are no further delays, of which I'm confident there will not be. If you like this type of content wherein I'm packing all the news into a single video and giving it to you as quickly and concisely as possible, make sure you hit the like button to spread it to more exiles and to subscribe to the channel for absolutely everything Path of Exile 2 related. No need to chase all the news on Reddit or Discord or Twitter or anywhere else. You can find it all right here from your Talkative Try. First up, let's look at the new mercenary skills. And I say mercenary skills because that is how they are being advertised, but as we all know, that is disingenuous. As in Path of Exile 2, just like in Path of Exile 1, you can use any skill from any class. Skills are not tied to classes unless they are associated with an ascendancy class, and we have not seen any ascendancy classes yet, so we don't know if they have special skills related to them. But if a skill is on a unique item, or if it's just a skill gem, you can use that skill on a witch, a warrior, a mercenary, a druid, whatever. So that means all these new skills that have been showcased that are tied to the mercenary could be used on a witch. They could be used on a druid. They could be used on literally any class in the game. And I want to stress that because some new players are still confused on this fact because of how Grinding Gear Games is advertising this. It makes sense from their perspective that they're showcasing new skills as associated to classes. But once you get into the game and realize that you can use anything that you would like on any class, it really opens up your mind quite a bit. Anyways, let's look at the two skills in full on this first teaser. They are Voltaic Grenade and Plasma Blast. Now, the first skill, Voltaic Grenade, appears to be a new grenade type that deals with the new ailment, which is called Electrocute. This is essentially the lightning damage version of Freeze. This seizes up enemies, causes them to spaz out a little bit. I don't know the exacts behind the Electrocute ailment. Perhaps you deal more type of a certain damage. Perhaps they're susceptible in some other way. Perhaps it lasts longer or is easier to scale than Freeze. But it does have a unique animation, as we can see with these mobs. They are like shaking in place a little bit. And the sound effects, I mean, the sound effects and all this stuff is absolutely top tier, along with the animations and visuals. But alongside all this awesome stuff, we then have Plasma Blast, which is following up the electrocution of these enemies. Now, it appears that the mercenary channels for between 3 and 4 seconds before unleashing this plasma blast onto them. It is a straight line. It appears to deal a substantial amount of damage, but as I said, it takes a bit to cast. So we don't quite know how exactly this will be used in practical play. We know that we're going to be using multiple skills, but are you really going to want to wait to charge up this big skill when you could just use a different type of attack? Now, it's very possible that you would like to do so, especially if it combos in some way with electrocuted foes. And we know they are going with these sort of combinations with many other skills, wherein if you meet condition X, your skill will do Y. And this could be one of those cases. I could see Voltaic Grenade being very useful for crowd controlling bosses and really hurting that stagger bar tremendously, especially if you learn how to aim the grenades properly. We do know that the grenades do have a fuse, and when you throw them, you have to predict where your enemy will be by the time that fuse expires. But here's an awesome little tidbit that we learned from developer Viperesque on the Discord server. Different grenades have different fuse durations, and they're modifiable. So two awesome tidbits here. The frag grenades, which we've seen in the past, there are the mere explosions, might have a different fuse duration than the Voltaic grenades, which seem to have a very short fuse duration. And then we can edit them. And the fuse duration is just a normal skill effect duration. So additions and subtractions to skill effect duration edit these fuses. Now that is a little mind-blowing. So I'm guessing that skill effect duration subtractions will lower the fuse duration, which means it'll cause the grenades to explode quicker. Now, this could quickly turn into a noob trap, wherein you've lowered your fuse duration so much so that the instant you chuck them out, they might explode right on top of you. Of course, some builds might be able to make use of this. This is Path of Exile after all, but I can see this absolutely blowing up, no pun intended, in the faces of people trying to make these grenades work. Now, you also have the option to make the fuse duration longer, which is also interesting. I'm not sure what circumstances you would want this to happen, since monsters move around so much in Path of Exile 2, but I'm sure some wacky exiles out there will make it work. Also, a note in this new teaser, we've seen this area that the mercenary is fighting in 2 times before. Once in the Path of Exile 2 Trailer 3 from ExileCon 2023, and a second time from Ziz's gameplay at ExileCon 2023. Since then, we have not seen this area, and oh my goodness, did it get a glow up in terms of the terrain, the effects, and even the monsters. They look phenomenal. I will be shouting out the visual designers a few times during this particular video, because all the latest stuff we've seen, from the visuals and the sound effects, the animations, just seem to be a tier above. They are using all this time on Path of Exile 2 to make it an absolutely top tier game. Okay, and here is the other teaser that we just received today about another crossbow skill, and it is Cluster Grenade. Now, this skill looks absolutely busted in the context of Path of Exile 2. Look at how wide the AoE is, look how much damage it appears to do, look at how the packs just blow up, and most importantly, look at the visual clarity of this particular skill. I'm very curious to see how this will scale into endgame, or if this is somehow already scaled. I mean, we're seeing it in Act 2 and in Act 3, so I'd presume it's not super scaled. Even at this level, not even halfway through the game, it looks ridiculous. I'm really curious to see how much more ridiculous it can look. And this has caused quite a bit of debate already in the Path of Exile 2 community. People are saying, oh my gosh, look, you're clicking one button and clearing a white pack. And oh my goodness, the visual clarity on this is not too great. And it hasn't been boosted at all before. All those points are pretty dang valid. But then again, there's the camp of people who have been waiting for something like this, waiting to see a skill that looks busted. Right? One button playstyle. So the question is, does this skill get limited in any way? Because as you can see on the footage here that I'm playing over and over, there's no UI. We can't tell if this has a cooldown or if this has limited uses. We know that frag grenades, for example, have a cooldown of 3 seconds and you get 3 at a time, I believe, so it takes time to refill those charges. Does this have a longer cooldown like Hammer of the Gods, which it kind of looks similar to, and not similar visually, I'm meaning the mechanics of it. There's a cooldown time or a cast time for Hammer of the Gods before it actually hits the monsters. It deals damage in a massive area, and it deals a massive amount of damage. This skill does exactly that, and it can be boosted by things like multiple projectiles and faster projectiles, as we see in the example here. I'm very curious to see how this balance is going to play out, but I'm also very excited to see that skills like this obviously exist in Path of Exile 2, and I hope it silences or at least appeases some of those critics who are saying there's not going to be busted skills in Path of Exile 2, everything's going to be super slow, super weak, da-da-da-da-da. It's very interesting to see this type of thing, and I hope as we get closer and closer to early access, we see them for other classes too. We've been obviously focused around the mercenary and crossbow skills. I'm very curious to see how busted something like the sorceress or the huntress, or in particular the warrior, can become with proper skill and support gem meshing. And very briefly, the last teaser that we've had from the Grinding Your Games community team was from October 29th, wherein they showcased 6 iconic uniques from Path of Exile 1 and how they look in Path of Exile 2. We just have this screenshot right here, pretty high quality, of not only the 2D art, but the 3D art as well, on what I think is the witch, which is interesting to see her wielding all these weapons. It just further cements the fact that in Path of Exile 2 and Path of Exile 1, you can do anything with anyone. Unless, and this has been a bit of a debate, we had this debate on stream the other day, this could not be the witch. Perhaps it's a gender-swapped version of something like the Templar, or another class, Or maybe this is the sorceress and Mjolnir will be meta. We don't know. We did some speculation. We have no idea what is the truth. One thing is for sure, though, the fact that every single unique item in Path of Exile 2 has 3D art is going to be an absolute boon for free-to-play players who don't want to play dress up with all the bought MTX brought over from Path of Exile 1 and earned and bought in Path of Exile 2. This art is crisp. I am a fan of the Path of Exile 2 versions of absolutely everything besides Goldrim. Come on. I know Goldrim got a glow up, but we need that iconic dinky cap, okay? I'm going to put side-by-sides of the art from Path of Exile 1 versus Path of Exile 2 right now. Just take a look at the comparisons. It's just wild to see. I imagine the designers who are doing all the work on this look back at what was created in the past and are just flabbergasted at how far the Path of Exile team has come from 2007 when they began development all the way to 2024. It is a sight to behold. Now it is time to dive in and summarize the exclusive interview with Shuhei Yoshida, who is Sony Interactive Entertainment's head of independent developer initiatives. He was Sony's president for a while from 2008 to 2019 before he moved on to a few other projects. And according to him in this interview, he's played Path of Exile 1 before. And spoiler for the end of the interview, he cannot wait to keep playing Path of Exile 2. Throughout the interview, you can tell that Jonathan is absolutely giddy, but at the same time, kind of nervous. Usually he has this aura of confidence and excitement inside of him when he's giving these talks and interviews with content creators like Scissorin or myself. In this one, he still has that excitement, but I sense a little bit of like, I can't believe I'm talking to this guy. This is so cool. I'm happy to showcase my game to someone who is a legend in the game development community. So there are three main parts to this interview, but the third part really doesn't have any new information in it, so we're just going to skip it over completely. Of course, alongside everything else, I have the links to the sources for all the stuff I'm talking about here today in the description below. So if you'd like to watch the interview in full, you are more than welcome to. We are going to go over the cliff notes here. Part 1 of the interview is just talking about Path of Exile 2 and how it has changed from Path of Exile 1. It's going over how they've simplified the game for new players and how important this is, alongside it remaining a game that has tremendous depth, because that is what Path of Exile and Grinding Gear Games is known for. They need to streamline the systems that introduce new players to the game while also maintaining the depth and complexity that players have come to love about the game and why they play the game for such a darn long time. First of all, the skill system is presented more like Diablo 2's skill trees. It's more intuitive, and all skills are still available to all classes as we knew. And all skills are available to all classes, as we've said before, and new players, they're kind of on a path, but that is perfectly okay. They will be fine on that path, because in Path of Exile 2, now when you get skills, you are suggested as a default support gems, which are also simplified. All the gems and stuff aren't on items, as we know, and new players can follow this recommended path so that they know what is going on and how they should buff their weapons. Yoshida himself said he used to play Path of Exile 1, but when he played Path of Exile 1, he had no idea which gems really buffed his ability to do damage or accomplish tasks, and he would mix and match different gems and they didn't make sense and it confused him, and I think he ended up really dropping the game. In Path of Exile 2, you're not going to have that issue. Lots of new players are going to be put on this path to success and eventually learn how to mesh certain skills and items together. And that is the fun of Path of Exile after you learn how to do it. That is the key that Grinding Gear Games is focusing on right here, teaching people how to become good at making builds work. Additionally, Yoshida constantly said when he played Path of Exile 1, he would never know if he should sell items or keep them, and it would cause him a lot of strife while playing. Well, now in Path of Exile 2, Jonathan says, they did a lot of that new player testing, and they found that the addition of gold to the game, in addition to giving value to just picking out gold from random monsters, also gave a purpose to vendors, which used to not have the greatest purpose for new players. Now you can easily just pick up items, sell them to vendors, and buy items from vendors, or just collect gold in your path to the end game. And that is far easier for new players to understand compared to more veteran players or players who would love to learn how Path of Exile's economy works with the orbs and collecting certain items, breaking them down into different components and all the like. It's a little bit complicated for very new players, and this helps a lot. Yoshida seemed to be a big fan of that. Additionally, I'd like to point out right here that when they go into the level with the artificial sun in the center of the level, there's a pop-up that says special level mechanic. Now, I can't tell if this is in game or if it comes up just on the video itself. It would be very weird if it came up in game. I'm pretty sure this is just a video thing, but maybe it's a warning because it's such an oddity in the game. Debate in the comments below. What do you think? Is this actually in the game or is this out of game inserted in post? Now, here's part 2 of the interview, and that is talking about the campaign and looking at some brand new gameplay, which I have been showing in the background quite a bit, because that is the bulk of what I focused on when I was watching this video for the first time. This is a new area in Act 3, which we saw screenshots of before and tiny video snippets that were extremely low quality. While this isn't in 4K or anything, this is still in HD, and it's the entire section of this area. And don't worry, there are no spoilers in this video, even though there were spoilers in other versions that were lower quality of this particular video. This is in Act 3. This is the Val area, and this appears to perhaps be in the past because we are fighting a Viper that is mentioned in unique items in Path of Exile 1 that has been gone for a very, very long time. How are we fighting her here? She seems to be standing up straight. She doesn't seem to be undead or anything. It's very interesting. I think there might be some time travel elements going on. There's no spoilers because we don't actually know if that's true. It could be something totally different. She could be undead, and I'm just completely misreading the current situation. Anyways, the area looks phenomenal. It's new, it's polished, and oh my goodness, it's only about halfway through the campaign. And speaking of campaign length, Jonathan in this interview once again confirmed there are 100 bosses in the campaign, 100 areas, many features in the end game, which has to be big because of how big Path of Exile 1 is, and it should take players 50 hours to get through the campaign. Once again, there's some fiery debate going on about campaign length in the Path of Exile community, thinking, oh my goodness, that's way too long to play through the campaign. How can they expect players to enjoy that over and over and over again? There's no campaign skip option, and there never will be. When people don't realize what he's really talking about here is either your first time experience in the Path of Exile 2 campaign or a brand new player's experience in the Path of Exile 2 campaign trying to work their way through it. You also have to remember in Path of Exile 2's campaign, there is a lot more to explore. There's not just going to be a straight line from A to Z, where Z is the end of the campaign and A is when you wash up on the shores of the riverbank. There's lots of secrets to explore. There's branching paths to take. There's going to be little hidden areas, tons of bosses to fight, things to collect. It's going to be a much better version of Path of Exile 1's campaign, which has been receiving some improvements over the past few leagues with those secrets that are making the campaign oh so much better. In fact, those might be my favorite additions to Path of Exile 1 in the past few leagues. I really love encountering them when I'm leveling through the campaign on my first character in a new league. The monk gameplay in this looks brilliant. I played the monk a little bit at the console event, and I was terrible, but I was starting to learn how to combo certain abilities together, and Jonathan gives everyone a masterclass on how to use charged staff with the dust attack and combo certain things together, and enemies are just dropping, and the boss that he takes on, the Viper, I mean, she's taking tremendous damage, and he's able to weave in and out of the battlefield with all these different abilities, with the battlefield getting tighter and tighter the further in the boss he gets, because all of these soldiers are tightening the ring around them. It's just super cool to see how all these abilities do conjoin together and how they're designing these later boss fights. We're in Act 3 now. We haven't seen a lot since ExileCon 2023 of these later boss fights. The past year or so has been focused on Acts 1 and 2, but seeing something cool and unique like this in Act 3 is just brightening my day. And honestly, as someone who has just played through Diablo 4 Vessel of Hatred, it reminded me of the fight against the fallen knight, the fallen paladin, wherein you're being surrounded by a bunch of soldiers and they are slowly encroaching in on you. And there's some fire AoE and different attacks from him. This fight shown here is just a version of that is, I'm not kidding, maybe 20 times better. Visually, mechanically, I don't know what else to say. I'm not digging on D4, but oh my goodness, this is just a better designed version of that fight. We also learned, I think this is a new discovery, that you can ignite or electrocute the bell, this Tempest bell here, and you can cause its explosions to deal lightning or fire damage or whatever type of damage from it. I'm sure if you freeze the bell, then you'll deal cold damage from these novas coming from it. I didn't know that, and that's pretty darn cool. Yoshida also comments on the gameplay during this section, saying that Path of Exile 1 is very accommodating when it comes to difficulty, basically saying it's not too hard. Whereas in Path of Exile 2, this actually looks fun and difficult, which is something that Yoshida very much enjoys. It's a funny casual dig at Path of Exile 1's difficulty. He needs to fight the Gauntlet Uber Maven. That's who we need to fling him into fight. And then part 3 is just talking about couch co-op. Jonathan and Yoshida play together, and there's not a lot of new stuff there, so we're just going to gloss over it. There is one more thing before I get to the tool that I wanted to talk about for Path of Exile 2 builds, and that is this, what is it, a message, a Blue Sky social post, whatever, from Blue Sky, which is the new Twitter from Dominic Tarrison. Now, if you don't know Dominic, he flew out to New Zealand about a month ago to do some Path of Exile 2 press and gameplay and everything, but he's going to be under embargo until, I think it was supposed to be November 15th. Maybe it's pushed to December 6th now that's the new early access date. But he did drop this very interesting tidbit on Blue Sky. I know not many people have seen this. I'm going to show it to all of you here today watching this video. He said, I have a feeling a lot of people will get a kick out of the mercenary class in Path of Exile 2. It's basically twin stick shooter Doom Guy. His crossbow has shotgun, assault rifle, sniper, HMG, and even plasma cannon fire modes. Waiting for the BFG reveal. For those of you who don't know, BFG stands for Big Gun. And I don't know if he has inside information. I don't know if he maybe broke NDA, but if he hasn't, and we're waiting for the big gun reveal, the stuff that you see and stuff like Doom and Space Marines, these massive artillery weapons, and we're going to be getting that in Path of Exile 2, and he's already glimpsed it. Oh, sign me up. I might have to swap from starting as the Druid, if that's an early access, to the Mercenary, which will definitely be an early access. Finally, to close out this video for the most part, I'd like to show you all PoE2skills.com. This is a site that is pulling in basically all of the skill data that we've received from all the different versions of demos of Path of Exile 2, the open public versions of Path of Exile 2, and it is conglomerating them here on this site. You are able to build your own builds in preparation for Path of Exile 2's early access. It's improved massively in the past few weeks, and you're actually able to use it pretty dang well. We've even had a community member take the ride, start to make a bunch of builds, which I have been ignoring. I'm sorry, Take the Ride. But for those of you who are interested and don't want to go blind into Path of Exile 2 and just build something yourself, I will link his YouTube channel in the description below. You can check him out. I'm not really doing any of this build prep, or I'm not going to look at other people's build prep. I'm going to go into Path of Exile 2 completely blind, try to make something myself using the tools inside the game. I don't even think I'm going to be using PoE2 skills. I'm just going to use the tools available to me in Path of Exile 2 so I can have the most raw and authentic experience possible when that game launches on December 6th. But if you'd like to use it, go for it. Link is in the description below. And that is going to wrap up the news video today about Path of Exile 2 teasers and tidbits that we've received in the past week or so. I know everything has been pretty dry for now, but I have a lot of stuff cooking that's unrelated to news, some essays, some lore videos coming out, and of course, once a sizable amount of teasers have built up, I will be making videos about said teasers just like this one today. And if you enjoyed it and want to watch more of my content, make sure to subscribe to Talkative Try and hit the sub notification bell. Like the video to spread it to more exiles. And if you'd like to financially support me, check out my Patreon, please. That's all for this one. I will see you in the next one. Watch this video on screen now if you are interested in learning about Path of Exile's lore that you need to know for Path of Exile 2.